Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are doing another one of our point of interest videos. I can't remember what prompted this discussion in general. We were talking about maybe something about Black Panther. I can't remember what it was, but
technically it was in our last POI. We were mentioning how that one of the biggest things that help movies flourish, if it's a sequel, is if the characters have a compelling arc going forward. And oftentimes, so they don't, and that kind of got us to the point of we should probably talk about character arcs going later on.
Right. I feel like most of this conversation is going to be more anime related. I think just for the fact they mostly follow the arc format or template when it comes to their stories. Usually told in art, at least from as far as I know. You guys are a little bit older than me, so maybe I'm wrong. But as far as I'm familiar with anime, as far as I've watched, and most of the shows are described in the different arcs that they're in, rather than be like Hunter x Hunter, Cell, DBZ.
Yeah, like those are story arcs. Character arcs, those are in everything. Like So
we're talking about. My bad. I'm wrong arc. My bad.
So did you want to talk about story arcs? I thought we were talking about character arcs.
I thought we were talking about it's either way. It's fine with me. We can go into character arcs because I guess that's what we were talking about. But go ahead. Oh, that's my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, character arcs, like that's the journey a character travels and ends at. Like that's like where like I'm trying to explain this without using character arcs to explain this. All right, so a character.
I'm sorry,
arc,
we're 3 minutes in. This is the best. This is by far our best POI yet. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. All right, yeah, a character arc is essentially the path a character travels within the course of the story. So, like if a character starts off being timid and quiet and scared all the time, it ends up being a badass by the end. That is their character arc. If a character is like cold-hearted and shut off to the world and ends up like being a friendly person by the end, that is their character arc. It's just the path that they follow to get to where they are at the end of the story.
So question I would have then for you guys that I propose is, what would you define as the objective format of how good a character arc is? Does it need to have a certain amount of development? Does it need to be a certain length? What do you guys qualify as a good character arc?
Obviously, anytime we deal with art of any kind, and storytelling is an art form, it's highly subjective. What I usually use as the metric for whether or not a character arc is quote unquote good is if the journey that the character takes is believable and if it is compelling. So, and also if the causality behind it makes sense. One of the most famous character arcs of all time, let's just go with Zuko. Zuko from Avatar: Last Airbender. My man started his journey because he was trying to gain the approval of his father, more or less, and behind that also the approval of his whole Fire Nation. Spoiler alert for Avatar: Last Airbender. And he realizes over the course of his journey, of his arc with his uncle, that there are bigger, more important things than meeting the approval of a megalomaniac, tyrannical asshole. And he actually wants to help people in general. And that's what got him on the journey in the first place. He was trying to help, but he was trying to do the right thing. And he ended up realizing he was speaking out against his father. Long story short, he ends up on a journey trying to get his father's approval still, because he felt like he had messed up in the first place. So by the end of Avatar: Last Airbender, he realizes he's a better man without his father's approval, because his father's approval isn't the right thing to have in the first place. So Zuko's journey of going from a petulant boy to a wiser man is a great character arc.
I would argue one of the best character arcs in all of animation. Just because you see him at different stages, you get to get inside of his mind and really see some of his emotion at each spot to really understand how he got from point A to point B, all the way down to Z where he ends. And especially like you get to see a lot of it, especially towards the end in that the Book of Fire, when he's going around with all the individual members of Team Avatar and getting to see how he reacts with them and they react to him. I mean, that's just some high level writing that you don't see often. You don't really get to see characters directly be affected by another character, and vice versa. Like a lot of character development you see often is just kind of forced. Like, it's the plot says this person has to be this here, and so that now you're there. But it's rare that you actually get to see the breakdown of the steps there. Like, even if they're developing to a place that is negative or bad, if you see how they got to that and why they do it, I feel like that's way more impactful than just being there and doing it. That makes sense.
Exactly. Because what you kind of in a way hit or reminded me of a big point I wanted to discuss too, is how backsliding is part of a character arc too. Because especially if it's long form storytelling, like an anime series or several seasons of a TV show, like real life, we all have moments where we kind of backslide or kind of forget or make mistakes. And bringing up Zuko again, there's a part in the second season where he backslides badly, and he also he has to amend for that. And also over the course of the series, he made several mistakes, and it shows him in the Book of Fire doing what he can to amend for those type of things. It's not a character's growth has to be earned and shown. Another one, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this one, so I'll go ahead and mention it now. Our boy Vegeta, he starts off as a straight up hardcore, cold-blooded villain, period. And he's proud of that. And he was meant to originally die. According to Toriyama, he wanted him to die at the end of that arc, but he didn't. So because of that, over countless episodes of a series and in a manga, he has to grow and he has to change. And we see him, we see the slow curve as he goes from being a villain that doesn't care about anyone but himself and trying to defeat Goku and having his pride restored. We see him go to a family man that cares more about his family than himself.
So I remember, funny enough, this sparked my memory as far as how we got to this, which was, like you said in the last video, Goku was the main issue of discussion with his character arc, but we'll get to that in a second. We'll get there in a second. But to focus on Vegeta specifically, for me personally, I understand your perspective as far as his character arc. For me, it's been kind of flimsy as far as him and his character arc goes, because he goes from that hardened villain, like you said originally with the show, and then getting into the Buu saga, it feels like, yeah, he was there, but he like almost easily slid back into a villain role because he had never got over that need for power to be stronger than Goku. And then even going into Super, it seems like he's still motivated by the thing of being stronger than Goku. He's obviously like changed in the ways of like developing a family and caring about his family, but it still feels like his sole motivation is to do or train hard is to be stronger than Goku in a sense.
Yeah, and I would argue that that's what makes his writing good. Like the fact that he isn't like now this pure being after being that horrible person that he was at the beginning. Like the fact that he is still arrogant but still has flashes of goodness and some great moments. Like, you know, him sacrificing himself fighting Majin Buu was a great moment. Some of the rants that he went on in Super during the Tournament of Power, I was like, Vegeta, like, what you doing? Like, and that's in a horribly written show, right? Like,
objectively, is it objectively bad?
We went from things from being subjective to now it's objectively bad. That's hilarious.
Yeah, like the writing of Super was bad. I'm not gonna argue against the animation of some of those fights because I mean,
right.
But
I see your point. The only issue I have with him as a character is still feels like if your main motivation doesn't change at all, like if your whole motivation to train and get stronger is to be stronger than this one individual. Part of that's on Toriyama because it feels like whenever Vegeta gets that power up, Goku gets another broken one that just puts him exponentially farther than Vegeta. So it just feels like he has this never-ending motivation that he's never going to be okay with. That he's like his pride will never let him be okay with that. Almost.
That's mostly because Toriyama hates him.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some way, ironically enough, in a meta sense, Toriyama had a character arc too, as far as getting over his hatred for Vegeta
Right.
and finally accepting who he was. Especially look at the manga now. But anyways, the thing about Vegeta, addressing what you're saying as far as the Buu saga specifically, Vegeta did change. He did grow, but it was still in there. He waited 7 years knowing that Goku was going to show up, and he trained for 7 years specifically to actually have this opportunity to see if all his hard work had paid off against Goku. And it wasn't as much I wanted to beat Goku to kill him. It's more or less still that his motivation was he wanted to see if he actually had grown as a fighter, as a warrior, all these things. And it wasn't meant to be out of malice. It's almost like it's kind of a sense of it's basketball players, a sport in a sense. So I get it from there. And yes, he does, but he still backslides. It happens lots of times in longer journeys or stories. A character will backslide in some way or another. It happens even in real life. I try to pride myself on trying to be healthy and do the right thing, but boy, I'll tell you, I have had plenty of times where I grabbed a tub of cookie dough, eating it just raw, eggs and everything. I've gone to protection. No protection, of course. I've had times where I've gone to a place to get a burger, and they give me a vegan patty, and I wanted to punch everything in the room twice. So we all have our backsliding moments, and I think that's what makes things that much more realistic or compelling.
Sneaker, it's the blackest shit. I'm sorry, y'all. It's the audio version, so y'all can't see, but this nigga's the blackest shit I've ever seen.
There's so much. I got to cut some.
Only because it's only audio. Hey, it's only audio.
Yeah. Please don't do that on a video.
I would never.
Oh God! But
cut some of this out. But
to get into your point though, I see your perspective. It feels more like a pride again, like he never got over his pride. Because with the Buu saga, it felt like he was training to not, like you said, not to kill Goku, but to assert his dominance over him. Like I want him to know I'm stronger than him. And you see that even continued on with Trunks and Goten. He's training his son because he wants his son to be stronger than Goten.
Right.
He's like, I need to make sure my progeny is stronger than anything to do with Goku, with Kakarot.
But he wasn't over his journey yet. That's the thing. His arc was used on it.
With characters, like when I think of characters' personality, I always try to go like to one word for it, like just to have it so I can understand it in my mind when I'm building out one. And that one word for Vegeta is pride. Like,
right.
He says saying pride like every other episode. Like he's a very proud person. Like pride is like that is his devil, you know. So like if he was ever just like shed that pride, I don't even know if that's Vegeta anymore. So I mean,
what's funny about that right there, Otis, is there's one brief moment in the lore of DBZ where he does go of his pride. He says, "I don't care anymore. I just don't care," and he goes Super Saiyan for the first time ever. So it's almost like the one time he lets go of his pride is the one time he's rewarded for it. But yeah, piggybacking off what you were saying, and to kind of get into more of your question, Dev. I know we've been on DBZ for a while here, but we'll move on. But he wasn't through with his arc just yet. His arc isn't really hit. Essentially, his arc doesn't hit its zenith in a sense until after he really sees the repercussions of his pride. And his pride hits its peak during the Buu saga, when he actually lets Majin Buu take over him on purpose to close the gap between him and Goku. When he opens fire on a crowded audience in front of his wife and kid, and pretty much you see Bulma fall out like, man, that's the man I married is still a monster. And he realizes it too. For Vegeta to realize how far he's fallen, a sense, how far he realized he came a long way over those years, and for him to backslide that far, he regrets it. He actually feels genuine regret, which is why he does. He hugs his son goodbye. I'm sure he's never hugged Trunks in his life before. He hugs Trunks goodbye, and he blows himself up as far as like he's trying to atone for what he's done. That's the actual peak of his arc in a sense. It's where he realizes what he's done, comes to terms with it, and tries to find a way to atone for it. Yes, and later on he comes back and he helps Goku and they fuse and they fight Buu and everything else as that. But as far as in a big sense, the peak of his arc is actually blowing himself up, trying to atone for what he's done, his wrongs.
So then, okay, to use this discussion as a transition point into, I guess, a deeper discussion about character arcs in general. Can a successful character arc to you guys that is great, can that character keep the same motivation, or does the character's motivation need to change?
I feel like the motivation should never fully change. Like the goals can change. Like, you know, you can go from having one thing, achieving that thing, or failing that thing, but going to achieve, like, now go to another goal, like, that's fine with me. But being motivated by a completely different thing, I don't necessarily dislike it, but it has to be like you have to have a significant reason to change a character's entire motivation.
It's almost hardwired into our DNA as people, as beings. It's the same with the characters. If you have it that a character's, like Otis mentioned before with Vegeta, his pride, essentially. Or if you have it that a character, I know you like Goku. If you have Goku's ability, his driving force for everything that defines him is to become a better fighter. If he's just like one day, like, forget it, I don't care about fighting. It's like, and he's like, all I want to do is make the best art possible. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense for your character. But in real life, our motivations, oftentimes a motivation, for example, as a creator may be to grow as a creator, or to have a wider reach, and to have more people aware of what you're creating for them. And let's say that, for example, you reach the mountaintops where everyone under the sun knows your work. Do you just stop trying to make more work that people know about? No, you try making more work, create new things people care about. It never really goes away. It just kind of, it just shifts its focus for you in a sense. That's how I take things, and that's the problem I think with most films in a series, is that the character will reach their arc. Their arc will conclude in the first film. And if they go to the next film, it's like we'll have to grow in some other way. How do they grow? And
cough Matrix.
In the Matrix, they literally have where Neo's like, in the beginning of that movie, he's like, I don't know what to do. He says it multiple times, like, I don't know what to do. So it's a very hard thing to happen. Even with Keanu Reeves again, with the John Wick films, in John Wick 2, the whole point of John Wick 1 was that he was trying to get peace back after his puppy was murdered, essentially. And once he gets a new pup, he's kind of like, what am I doing? It felt almost off watching him go on another spree, because it's like he's not really trying to. It's not a personal arc anymore. So it's a hard thing to do. So
obviously, I didn't mean, when I meant different motivations, I don't mean something that's completely on the other side of the railroad tracks. But to use, I guess, going back to Zuko and using him as an example, because like you guys said, that's probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, character arc in animation. With him, obviously, the animation starts with him. The show starts with him wanting to get that approval from his father and prove himself by hunting down the Avatar. And obviously, he transitions away from that to where now he's trying to help the Avatar defeat his father. I guess you could argue that he's still trying to get that approval in a sense, but for me, watching the show as many times as I've watched it, it seems like he kind of put to bed the need of approval from his father, and he felt like he had a different motivation altogether working with the gang, trying to do something completely different. And if that, to me, again, if that's the bar set of like the best, to me, I'm looking for my characters. If it's a longer arc, I'd like to see their motivation change in a sense, not like you said, not going from fighting to painting, but obviously I'd like you to have some kind of motivational change.
Yeah, I mean, but with that, like, you saw those steps that he had to go through to get to those. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, as long as that happens, I can accept, a goal changing. But like, just like one movie, you're, painting things in black, and the next movie you're riding bikes. Like, if you don't show the work, then I won't respect it.
Yeah. Well, to I guess part of what it is too is I kind of misspoke a little bit talking about Zuko as far as what he wanted. I guess part of it is what they have is their want and their need. Zuko wanted his father's approval, but what he needed was his honor, and he mentions all the time, honor, his honor. So actually, for Zuko, what is really important to him is his honor. And he realizes that the more he chased the Avatar or Team Avatar, if we'll call it that, he lost his actual honor. And when he disrespected his uncle, he really lost his honor. So the biggest part of his journey actually didn't really change. It just the focus changed. It changed from being honorable in his father's eyes to being honorable in his own eyes, honorable in his uncle's eyes. So it's still there. It's still going with your analogy, Deb. It's still on that same track. That train track.
Gotcha. Well, this has been a riveting discussion.
Oh, we're not done yet. The flat arc. The flat arc.
Damn, I guess it's gonna be an extra long video then apparently.
Because
initially we said it would be like 15 to 20, and we're at like the exponential mark.
We did. We have to
split it up into part 1 and part 2.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll get on part 2.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the second episode. As far as we'll make this one a 2-parter. So guys, thank you for tuning in. If you guys have any suggestions on any kind of narrative discussions that you feel like we should have, that you want to hear about, let us know in the comments. Again, thank you for your support. We hope for your continued support, and we will see you guys next time. This is the Then Podcast. Peace.